What's up, Crown Crew? Welcome to Crowned Athletics. Hi, I'm Kirsten, your self-proclaimed fitness princess. In today's video, I want to talk to you guys about how to train for the Walt Disney World Marathon. It's coming up this January. Hopefully, if you're running it, you're already in the midst of your training, but it's gonna start picking up pretty soon. You're gonna start getting to those long runs on the weekends. I've run the Walt Disney World full marathon twice now. The second time I ran it as part of the Goofy Challenge, where I ran the half marathon on the day before. I am not a runner at all, so it's kind of funny that I am here talking to you guys about how to run a marathon. I can't believe I've actually done two now, so I feel like I know a little bit coming from the beginner runner's perspective on how to train for a full marathon, especially the Disney one. Before we jump in, if you want to continue to learn more about all the different Run Disney races, I've done a lot of them. They're all back there. Make sure you subscribe to this channel. Okay, so I'm going to break up the training into two different kind of aspects. There's the very physical part, and then there's also kind of the mental part that you go through. When you're out there for that many miles, your brain starts to do funny things to you, and it almost becomes more of a mental battle than a physical one. So I kind of want to cover both sections. Okay, so you signed up for the marathon. Maybe this is your first one. You need to know how much commitment this is. This is kind of like taking on a part-time job. Besides just getting out there and running, you really have to look more at your diet, your rest, your recovery, and all of these things just take a lot of time. Listen, if you've done 5Ks, 10Ks, half marathons, maybe you've done some where you didn't put in the training and you kind of like pulled it out of your ass. I am guilty of that. A marathon, you can't do that. For one, you could injure yourself, and that's a whole other thing. But besides that, you really want to enjoy your marathon. You've trained this whole time and you've worked so hard, hopefully, if you're following all these training tips, and you want to enjoy the day that you've built up so big in your head, and it's going to be a monumental piece of your life. You want to enjoy that day. You want to look back on that day with fond memories, not miserable memories. And we're doing this in Walt Disney World, so it's going to have all these levels of magic. You want to be able to relish in that magic and not be upset and in pain and just wanting it to be over. You want it to last as long as possible. So just know right now that this is going to take a lot of time, but it's going to be so worth it. I promise. So like I said, besides just the getting out there and running, you really want to make sure you're eating appropriately during this time. Looking at your diet is the most important right now. Everyone all over the internet has different tips of what you should be eating during this time, but just make sure you're listening to your body and really fueling yourself with great nutrients. You are going to be able to tell when your body responds to really good food more than any other time in your life, is what I found. I would get so drained, even on days that I wasn't training, from not eating enough. I mean, I was eating a ton. I was eating lots of carbs and lots of protein. I would find that within a minute of putting that food in my body, I would just like be full of energy. I could just feel this total difference in my body from the food I was eating. And also recovery. I didn't really realize how important recovery was until I started training for a marathon. I implemented ice baths into my recovery, which is crazy. I remember in high school when football players would say they did ice baths, and I was like, no, there's no way I would ever put myself in that situation. I'll just deal with the pain. But then I learned how incredible they are for your recovery and how they can take your day from being miserable and just hobbling around the house to having full working legs. It's amazing. And this means that I do this on race day. Absolutely, because then I want to be able to walk around the parks after I just ran my race and show off my medal. So figure out what works best for you and make sure you're committing to this recovery. I know when you get home from like a 20-mile run and all you want to do is just lie down on the sofa, but what you really need to do is plan out all your recovery before you leave on your long run, so that when you get home it's all ready for you to go and you can make sure that you do it. Maybe get a loved one to start your ice bath for you so you don't have to be sitting there waiting for the tub to fill up. Maybe shoot them a text when you're almost home saying, hey, can you start my ice bath for me? I also always keep those mini chocolate milks on hand in the fridge so that right when I get home from my run I can have one of those and I don't have to worry about making my full meal when I'm really tired. I can just start chugging one of those while I'm in my ice bath, and then it'll give me a little bit more energy to prepare my full meal afterwards. So this next tip for training, everyone's gonna say this obviously, don't skip your long runs. I know they seem like the world's worst thing to do. Who wants to say like, yeah, I'm going out for a 20-mile run tomorrow? But the more you do them, the more prepared you're gonna be and the more you're going to love your marathon later. You don't really have to worry about your pace or your speed or anything. Just find a nice area to run and just go. Because this is such a commitment and my new part-time job, I kind of had to talk to my loved ones about this time in my life and what that was going to mean for them. I wasn't going to be around to go on those trips every weekend. I was going to have to get to bed nice and early. When I made plans for a long run, I really had to commit to that. So even like work Christmas parties, I had to go for maybe just an hour and then head home. I couldn't party with all my friends and everything because this marathon really meant a lot to me, and it's maybe a once in a lifetime opportunity, and you just really want to make sure you're showing that commitment to yourself, really. Now I do the run walk method. So on these long runs, it's really not that big of a deal because I can just kind of run, walk, run, walk. The intervals almost help the time go by faster because it's like, oh, I can do anything for a minute, right? I can run for a minute and then I get a little bit of a break. So if you're really concerned about being able to run a full marathon and you haven't tried the run walk method, make sure you look into that. You can go to Jeff Galloway's website. He's like the official trainer of Run Disney, and he's really big on the run walk method and will explain everything you need to know. And it makes running a marathon much less intimidating. I never thought I would run a marathon, but now that I can run walk it, I know I can fully do it. So fuel is a huge thing when you're training for a marathon because you're gonna need a lot of it. I started testing out my different methods of fueling actually earlier when I was doing like 10Ks and half marathons, so I figured out what I liked. But if you don't really know yet, try testing it on your shorter runs, like your 5 or 6 mile runs, even up to your like half marathon distance. You want to make sure your stomach can handle it well and figure out what works best for you. People have all different kinds of things that they use. I personally really like the Cliff Blocks. They're super easy to carry. I don't like the goos because I never want like a full goo at once, so then I'm left with half of a goo and then it's gonna get everywhere. It makes your mouth kind of stick together when you're chewing it. It's just weird. So I really like the Cliff Blocks, and I'll just have one of those every 2 miles. I also like them because they're small, so I can just have one at a time and then I can have them more often, so it gives me something to look forward to because 2 miles goes by pretty fast and then all of a sudden I get to have another one. It's like those little tiny wins that you get to wait for. Also though, for these really long distances, when you're out there 18 to 20 miles, bring a credit card with you because then you can stop for a snack somewhere. I usually train in an area that has little coffee shops or 7-Elevens along the way, and I can stop and get something if I'm really craving it or I just need a break. So I recommend bringing your credit card. Also your phone. I know some people don't like to run with their phone. Sometimes I don't on shorter runs, but on long runs, I really like to bring it. I like knowing that if I need to get an Uber home, I can. Depending on your route and how far you are from home or from your car, you might be stuck out there if something really bad happens. If you cramp up or you get an injury, you don't want to push through that. You might need to be able to get yourself home. This is maybe one of my most important tips. Maybe something people don't think about if they're a beginner, kind of like what happened to me. I got a new pair of running shoes kind of halfway through my training. I was used to running on kind of a more low profile shoe, and now that I was within marathon training, I thought, oh, people run on these really, really squishy shoes. I should get squishier shoes too since I'm going further distances. So I got a pair, and maybe it's just the pair that I got and a different kind would work fine for me, but I'm pretty sure that I got a foot injury from those shoes. It happened after the second run I started wearing them, so I'm pretty sure it was the shoes. I was in my long distances, so I was getting really, really close to actual marathon day, and I had this foot injury and I was devastated, thinking that I might not even be able to run this marathon. It was going to be my first marathon. I had trained so hard up until this point. I was going to have to miss some of my other long runs because I was supposed to do a bunch of long runs. I only ended up getting one 20-miler in. I was supposed to do 2 more and I just couldn't because of this foot injury. I was going to PT all up until we left for Walt Disney World. I was terrified. Luckily it worked out. It did bother me throughout the race. I had to wear a foot brace, but please do not change your shoes if you find something that's really working for you, or if you do, make sure you have enough time before the race that if something goes wrong, you can switch back or you can switch to another pair. I really suggest not switching right in the middle of your training program. And my last physical tip, I know we're doing a lot of training and we got to get out there and put all these miles on our body, but make sure you're also resting. It's very intimidating when you look at your training schedule and it has all those miles every week, and then maybe you start following people on Instagram and they're saying how many miles they're doing per month, and you're like, am I doing enough mileage per month? But because you're a beginner and your body's not really used to putting this amount of stress on it, make sure you're giving enough time to rest. Really listen to your body. If you can get about 75% done of your training plan, you're doing really well, as long as that includes a lot of long runs. Also, because I was a beginner, I didn't do too much speed training in my training program. That can put a lot of stress on your body, and if you're not used to it, it can almost hinder you. Speed and hills are really good for your training, but if you're new to it, just make sure you're listening to your body and being careful. And then I want to give one additional tip for all my goofy and dopey runners. Since you're going to be doing multiple races throughout the weekend, the most important thing that I can say to you is to mimic those distances in your training. So from very early on, I would run back-to-back days to prepare for my goofy challenge. 2 miles the first day, 4 miles the second day, all the way up to when I did 10 miles and 20 miles. It makes a world of difference. You need to get your legs used to running on very tired legs. When it came to marathon day, I couldn't even believe that I had run a half marathon the day before. My legs felt fine. Granted, I probably could have run it faster if I hadn't done a half marathon the day before, but I didn't actually physically feel much different. So right now, as we're getting further into the months with the longer distances, make sure that you're mimicking those miles on your legs. Okay, so now the mental aspect of it, because seriously, a marathon can drive you insane. The first thing I did, knowing that I was taking on this massive accomplishment, was finding a local run club. A bunch of my friends over on the East Coast, they all run together and they're part of a run group, and it just sounded so much fun. So I found one near me that I could join, hopefully to find some more runners so I wouldn't be alone out there. It was nice because then you also get a coach and he kind of tells you what you should do and he encourages you. And then on your long run days, he would ride a bike in between like all of us and check on us. So it was really nice to have someone that I could rely on in case something went wrong. He'd bring us Powerade and water and just like chit chat with how you were doing. And then we'd all get breakfast afterwards, and it was just really nice to have a support system. I didn't find anyone in my run group with my pace. I kind of was the slowest one, which was unfortunate. But if you can find someone at your pace, then it's really nice to have someone to chat with when you're running. They need to make like a dating app for runners, like things you're interested in that you would like to talk about, your pace for certain, what races you're interested in. I would like that. Can we find that, please? So this past marathon that I did, I actually ended up training all on my own, and on some of those really long runs, I had a rough time out there by myself. So since I brought my phone with me, I would actually text my friends who live on the East Coast for encouragement, and they are the best friends ever, my biggest cheerleaders, and they would just cheer me on as I was trying to finish my last couple miles. You could also do the same on like Facebook or Instagram, you know, like post a story or something and write like, hey, please message me with some encouragement, I'm dying out here, and then it makes you feel less alone. I also fell in love with podcasts. I know podcasts are just popular in general now, but they are lifesavers. I can only listen to music for so long before I get kind of bored of it. I would usually start with like a super inspirational podcast, like the Runner's World podcast or like the Born to Run book on tape, really get me fired up for my long run. And then when you're towards the end and you're dying and you just want to finish, I'd usually put on a guilty pleasure podcast like Bachelor or something. It just helped me when it got really, really boring and hard out there. So this might be a weird tip. It's something that I would kind of say to myself as I was out there and it just felt like the worst thing in the world. I would try to remember something else that like really, really hurt. So maybe like a really bad dentist appointment or a surgery you've had, or something that was actually super, super painful. And then I would kind of compare it to the state that I was feeling in my training run and realize that it really wasn't as painful as maybe that awful dentist appointment. It's just making sure that you put everything back into perspective, because when you're out there for so long, your mind just kind of blows it out of proportion a little bit. Granted, this is not if you're injured or anything like that, but if it's just usual like tiredness, if you compare it to something that was way worse, it kind of puts you back into perspective and you're like, okay, I can finish this. Another thing I like to think about if maybe I'm trying to skip a run or say like, no, it's fine, I'll be fine, I don't need to do that run today, but I'm not too tired to do it, it's just like my brain doesn't want to. Do you remember those kids in high school that were like too cool to do the homework, and then you were like the nerd if you did the homework and you wanted to get a good grade in your class. But then they weren't so cool anymore when they failed all their classes and then they had to get held back a grade, and then that's super embarrassing. So don't be that kid. Be really proud of doing your homework, doing the training. When you're finished your whole training schedule and you can look back and say like, damn, I really kicked ass at that. You're gonna be so much more confident going into marathon day too, because that day is full of nerves. So if you at least know that you killed it at your training, you'll be a little bit more confident the day of. Something that I want to tell you, if you are a first-time marathoner, you're never going to experience anything else like this. You will seriously be a changed person. Not usually big into the woo-woo kind of stuff, but seriously, doing a marathon fully changed my life. I look back on it so many times. I look back on the training, I look back in the marathon itself, and it is life-changing. I hope that just encourages you that this is going to be incredible and you're going to hopefully love it and be so proud of yourself. I mean, my God. I just went back to the room after I finished the Walt Disney World Marathon and bawled my eyes out because I was so proud of myself and I couldn't believe that I did that, and you're gonna feel that way. And that's the most amazing way to feel. I don't really know anything better in life than feeling so proud of yourself. So you're gonna do it and it's gonna be fine. And I just hope that you have the best marathon experience ever. And that's why we're doing all this training, so that it will be. So I hope all those tips prepared you for the Walt Disney World Marathon. Training is definitely the full battle here. And from me to you, I just want to let you know that you're doing so well and keep up the good work. You're gonna have the best marathon day ever. If this is your first marathon, let me know. I'm so excited for you. I will be there at marathon weekend. I'll be doing the 10K and it might be in a costume that you will recognize, so be on the lookout. If you're starting to plan your race day costumes, which you should totally run in costume, it makes the experience so much more magical. Make sure you check out crownedathletics.com. We have our new villains tank tops that just came out. This is the Maleficent one, all made from awesome athletic fabrics, so you'll be cute and comfortable on race day, especially if you're doing 26.2 miles. That is something to take into consideration. You can't just wear a normal cotton t-shirt. If you like this video, please give it a big thumbs up. Thank you so much for watching. I am so very grateful. Make sure you subscribe and always wear your crown with pride. Bye!